Hey everybody, this video is going to go over all the steps that you need to know to finish your pop art project. Let's get going. You've chosen and cut out your images, and you've measured out your large piece of paper, drawn rectangles for them to fit in, and you've glued them on with a glue stick. Next, you're going to choose some colors in oil pastel. I'd like you to choose bright colors, and analogous colors, warm and cool. So choose some blues, some greens, purples, and some reds, yellows, and oranges. And make sure that they are bright. No blacks, no whites. We want these to mimic Warhol's style. So we want all very bright colors of oil pastel to work with. Now you're going to go to your first image and start adding in some color into some areas of the image. So you can choose one or two colors to start adding and putting into the accents. Make sure that you are coloring in only the gray or white areas of your photocopied image, and that you're not coloring in over any of the black areas. Generally speaking, we want to avoid that. You can also add some fun lines of color. And then we're going to start to work in the background. I'd like you to pick a color that you haven't used on your object for the first background. Color right up to your image, but don't color on your image. And I'd like you to choose two analogous colors for this background. So if you're choosing a green background, like in this example, you would choose maybe a green and a yellow, or a darker green and a lighter green. I also want to offer you a word of caution here that I did not take the time to clean off my oil pastel by rubbing it on an extra sheet of paper and just getting off all of that extra junk that it picks up from being next to other oil pastels in the box. And because I didn't do that, it ended up smearing on my project. So please make sure that all your oil pastels are kind of cleaned off before you go to use them. You are going to blend in the lighter color into that darker color that you have that's close up to your image. And then once that's done, you are going to blend in a little bit of that darker color again back into the lighter color until you have the whole image background colored in. And it should kind of look like it's sort of darker a little bit around the image, and then it gets lighter out towards the edges of the rectangle. So make sure you have everything filled in all the way up to the line on each edge of the rectangle. And then you can begin to look to your second image. And maybe you want to start by adding the two background colors into this one. And again, adding some fun lines, choosing a different color for the different features, choosing two analogous colors for the background, adding the darker color toward the object and the lighter color out toward the edge, and filling that whole rectangle in. These are the two finished squares next to each other, and you can see they've used contrasting colors. Colors just meaning that the colors stand out from each other, that we haven't chosen two background colors that are too similar. You can see that different colors were used on the object, and that none of those colors were repeated in the same background as that object. You can also see the different features and the different accent lines that were used and some of the blending that happened. There were two analogous colors in the hair, for example. You don't want the colors to stand out too much from each other, but adding an extra layer of a color that's similar just adds more depth and richness to that area. So make sure to keep that in mind as you're working. Next, we are going to move on to the third section, and you're going to, again, keep in mind contrasting and that it's going to sit on top of and next to another square. And you want to make sure that you are keeping in mind that idea of contrast and that you are not repeating any colors that you've already used on the object in the same way that you have. So again, we're just trying to get some good variety here of colors. Remember, you're repeating the same colors that you chose at the beginning. You're not going to add any more colors in. But you do want to make sure that the way you use the colors adds variety to your image. So these 3 rectangles that are done at this point in the project that you're seeing right now have 3 different color backgrounds, are using the colors differently on each object so that they stand out from each other, and they all look different and unique and interesting, but they're all part of the same piece. So now make sure that where any of your rectangles come together, in this case it's 4, all of those points are meeting up nicely and clean. Make sure you're working all the way up to the edge of your lines and that you're using your oil pastel in a really accurate way to get that. Make sure your blending looks good. You can go over it and put in a couple layers of each color like we did in the backgrounds, just to kind of make sure everything's blended okay. The oil pastels blend with each other, so that's how we're going to create that smooth look. And then you can step back and take a look at the finished product. Make sure everything's standing out the way that you want it to look. Make sure your colors are harmonious but also have contrast. And make sure that everything looks good in the way that you want it to be. At that point, you will be done with your pop art project. Congratulations, and I hope to see it hanging up in the hallway soon. Thanks for listening, everyone. Now go get to work.